With the YNW Melly trial now being on break for just one day, a new piece of evidence just hit the records that is very concerning. Here's what you need to know. A new report was just shared stating the Stranger Things jacket YNW Melly is wearing in the video just hours after the crime is the same one as YNW Juvy had on when they left the studio early on in that morning. YNW Bortlen is wearing the one Sakchaser had on. Crazy, isn't it? Including a Facebook live video of somebody recording YNW Melly and Bortlen just hours after the crime went down.
Hey.
You see him? Melly still turned regardless of what happened this early morning. He's still out here being very positive. Turned still. Hey! The dog still turned regardless of what happened. You already know.
That is how YNW Melly and YNW Bortlen were reacting and even feeling just hours after the incident, as the timestamp on the Facebook Live is October 26, 2018, which is the exact day that the crime happened. Obviously, it's not the exact same jackets as the ones inside of the vehicle, it is just an identical version. However, moments after that video was then released online, YNW Bortlen would appear inside of the courtroom.
Poor little Henry?
Yes, sir, he's present.
That you in the back of the
Status conference.
Come on up.
And I don't know, I guess you're already in trial with co-defendant, I know. We're set for October 3rd for trial.
You had a motion pending as well?
Yes, Judge. As the court, when we were here the last time, you let him go to church and stuff, you said about working, you would be subject to seeing his schedule. We filed a schedule for the next couple of months.
I saw that.
Be able to work. And I talked to his probation supervisor. She has no problem with him at all. She said that if he's gonna go to work, she'd like anybody has to do, provide an itinerary, where he's gonna be, how he's gonna get there, how it's gonna get done.
As it was also announced, YNW Bortlen, YNW Melly's co-defendant, trial for the case will begin October 2nd. As during his small court hearing today, the trial date was set, but also a few questions we've all been waiting to hear an answer for were asked, which could relate to the feds knowing that YNW Melly was the guilty one all along. With the first question being, why did YNW Bortlen receive a bond out of jail for the last few years, but not YNW Melly?
And he was able to negotiate a bond for him because of the charges that he was charged with, because they felt that he wasn't the man, and because of his prior criminal history, which I think was very sparse. So all those things went into whether or not he was going to be given a bond. I think at the time that the bond was being argued, there was the evidence that was being presented at his bond hearing was very difficult to kind of gel together in terms of, as you've seen during the trial, right? So there's a lot of things that are going on in the trial that you're like, wait a minute, this doesn't really gel. Some things are out of whack. And that's what happens at an Arthur hearing when you're moving for bond on this type of charge.
Revealing the feds believed all the way from the start YNW Melly was the man who did the crime. Mix that with Bortlen not having a legal history, this is how YNW Bortlen received a bond. However, the next question is where it gets even more interesting.
Is it too late for Cortland to plea?
It's like the Justin Bieber song, it's never too late to say sorry, I think. No, I don't think it's too late. It's never too late. I've had individuals been offered pleas but turned them down in the middle of trial. I've had people offered pleas before a verdict came back. So it just depends on the case, depends on the prosecutor, depends on the actual charges. So no, it's never too late for that. He could take a plea in the middle of his case. I don't think that would happen. If he was going to take a plea, if there was going to be a deal, it would be in the middle of Melly's case.
Many online lawyers are stating that YNW Bortlen taking a plea deal is very likely in this case, especially with how YNW Melly's lawyers are treating this case for themselves, as it all started with a report of forensic expert in the YNW Melly case explains how he determined it was not a drive-by
assignment, which is to determine if this is a drive. And my determination was that this is not a drive-by, and it's based upon this picture here, which is a very good picture to describe it. All of these rounds are done. One is done at a stationary position. The at a stationary position when all but one of these rounds are going in. The one round that has some movement in it, which is round site L here, the actually moving in that to create the little bit of a that you see there.
Okay, a lot of information in that answer, so let's break it down a little bit. You mentioned so I'm gonna zoom in on site F.
This forensic expert is a 20-year veteran in his field. He's highly respected and has all of the accolades to prove it. After hearing what he shared, it makes sense why the prosecution left him to be one of their last witnesses/experts to be on the stand, as the next piece of evidence that he shared is very concerning for Melly. As the report states, YNW Melly is accused of being the one using the firearm in this situation. Sergeant Williams, who said there was an item used 3 times inside of the Jeep, including 17 times outside of the Jeep.
Number, you said 17 outside the car. How many rounds were inside of the car?
3.
And can you exclude the for Mr. Williams and Mr. Thomas as coming from outside of the car?
Yes. From the driver's side back seat.
As to the shot that killed Christopher Thomas, where did that come from?
Driver's side back seat.
Okay. Is it possible for there to have been 2 inside that car?
No.
Why not?
There is no time.
As we would then even hear from the rap lawyer speaking on this, as well as speaking on Sergeant Williams.
You see what the experts are doing for the prosecution, and what's interesting to me is what the defense is doing when they cross-examine these experts, which is they're essentially highlighting the prosecution's opinion. Rather than try to pick apart holes and say, what about this, what about that? They're saying, oh, this is what you're saying, right? That's a fact? Okay, and they're knocking them down, and they're pinning them down, and they're saying, okay, I'm gonna hold you to this. This is your opinion. You think you know for a fact that came after this person was bet. You think you know for a fact that these came from not a drive-by because of the trajectory, and I know bet. And so what you're going to see, what I assume, because what is the defense doing? Well, I assume they have experts who they believe are a lot more credible, who have testified a lot more times in cases, who have a lot more research and credibility based on their experience and history in the field. And those experts are going to come on and take the stand, and those experts are going to poke the holes and say, you can't possibly know when this in relation to that. You can't possibly know how. We'll see. But that's what seems like it's setting up for the defense's experts to come in and...
However, this is where it starts to get very weird in the trial, and even why online lawyers believe Bortlen is going to take a plea deal. Now, it's clear this expert is sharing unbelievable information, making it seem like YNW Melly definitely did the crime. So when it was time for Melly's lawyers to ask him questions, the prosecutors didn't even need to continue. Melly's lawyer begins asking, and the first question he asks is a clever way of practically snitching on YNW Bortlen. You need to hear this.
And you are aware that the person that claimed it was a drug is Cortland Henry?
I believe so. I don't know who said that it was a drive-by. I was just asked to say if it was a drive-by.
Okay. And you are aware that when Cortland Henry made this statement that this gentleman was nowhere around, right?
I wasn't part of the initial investigation.
Okay.
So I don't know if that was included in their, Miramar's investigation with that.
Okay. But what you are saying is whoever claimed was lying.
Was incorrect.
This is around now the fourth time YNW Melly's lawyers are making it public to the jury that Bortlen is the one that lied. He's the one that lied about what happened to the feds. As the first time YNW Melly's lawyers did this was 30 minutes into day 1 of the YNW Melly trial, where he revealed that YNW Bortlen had powder residue on his hands and a change of clothing for when he dropped off Sakchaser and Juvy to the local hospital, also revealing that Bortlen and Melly were the only two men in the vehicle with them.
Demon's lies, those were his lies. Cortland Henry shows up at Memorial Hospital, Miramar. You don't see him sitting there, but where you will see him sitting is in the driver's seat of a car with two bodies, a car riddled with bullets. And when he shows up with a change of clothing, change of shirt, powder residue on his hands, evidencing that he had discharged a firearm. And he lies. He lies about where the incident occurred. He lies about how it occurred. And he lies about not having a phone. I think it was Miss Bradley herself who said, everybody has a phone in his pocket, not Cortland Henry. There were 3 phones.
Making it now very obvious Melly's lawyers are trying to pin this onto YNW Bortlen, revealing that he lied to the feds when they were asking him what happened to Sakchaser and Juvy when Bortlen drove them to the hospital. But he also dropped information that nobody knew, which is YNW Bortlen bringing a change of clothing to a recording studio at 4 in the morning, as they also then presented the interview of Bortlen lying to the feds to the jury.
And I'm driving, ducking for my life, trying to make sure I don't get hit. And you telling me, you telling me about shit. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. I'm driving. I'm trying to make sure I don't get hit. You know what I'm saying? What I'm gonna be worried about? You know what I'm saying?
I know it's not for you to worry about.
Shit crazy, bro.
But if you tell me it happened there's gotta be some evidence there. There's gonna be broken glass, just like there's broken glass over here from when you guys opened the doors and stuff like that. Okay, there's gonna be broken glass over there when the windows got out. There's gonna be casings from the people at your car. Okay, there's gonna be evidence over there. Okay, right now, there's nothing. I kind of think I know what happened because I got information.
Leaving many people speechless on social media. This is when the famous rap lawyer would step in, confirming this was YNW Melly's lawyer.
And we have an absolute shell being dropped by the defense, a mic drop moment. The lead attorney on Melly's defense team telling the jury that Cortland Henry lied to police when he showed up at Memorial Hospital that morning. He lied about what happened. He lied about not having a phone on him. That Cortland Henry, this is according to Melly's attorney, that Cortland Henry showed up at that hospital with a change of clothes on, and that Cortland Henry showed up at that hospital with powder residue on his hands.
YNW Bortlen's name wouldn't even be done here getting brought up either. Later in the trial, we would hear more evidence of Bortlen having firearm residue on his hands, as we would see a report of forensic scientists that covered the passings in the YNW Melly trial says co-defendant YNW Bortlen tested positive for firearm residue.
So the right hand of Cortland Henry contained 0 particles characteristic of shot residue and 2 component particles, and the left hand contained 1 particle characteristic of shot residue and 1 2-component particle.
Okay. And can you explain to us what that means?
Basically, overall, there was shot residue present on the hands.
Which all of this is now very strange, as this isn't even YNW Bortlen's trial yet. Yet YNW Melly's lawyers are making it very clear to the jury Bortlen was also in this car. Bortlen was right there, and they're even hinting towards the possibility of him doing this. In the end, this could result in Bortlen making a plea deal and revealing the truth of YNW Melly being guilty, just like YNW Juvy's family is currently doing as well, as we would see YNW Juvy's mother take the stand very recently, where her job was to clarify which one of these individuals was her son in the surveillance footage of them leaving the recording studio.
Can you state your name, your full legal name for the jury?
Leon Phillips.
Okay. And are you related to one of the victims in this case?
Yes, I am.
How so?
I'm his mother.
And who is that?
Christopher Thomas.
Positive 21915. Ms. Phillips, did you see who entered into the occupants who entered into that gray Jeep?
Mm-hmm.
And is that a yes?
Yes.
Do you recognize where your son entered that gray Jeep?
Yes.
Which seat, if you can identify for the jury?
He got in the back seat on the right hand side.
Did you recognize the individual that got into the back seat on the left side, the rear driver's side?
Yes.
And who was that individual?
Jamel.
And Jamel, is that the defendant, Jamel Demons?
Yes, ma'am.
Sources are claiming YNW Juvy's father, so her husband, was the one supposed to be taking the stand on that day to clarify who was in that video clip. However, he was now ruled not allowed to be a witness due to what he posted on social media just a week ago, where we would see a report of the father of YNW Juvy explained why he believes YNW Melly is responsible for this crime.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation when I finally talked to him and Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They wasn't reacting to, they acted like they didn't have take a loss at all. That's how I took it. And then when I was talking to them, I still had in the back of my mind, something's not right.
As YNW Juvy's father took his frustration to social media after YNW Melly's reaction to a piece of evidence. Now in the report, we would see YNW Melly's reaction when a firearm expert tells the judge he didn't bring the item because he has no idea what item was used for this crime, alongside Melly's reaction.
Why not?
So the first thing is I didn't have a firearm, so I can't know which firearm I'm going to use in order to replicate any of my tests. So I can't make tests for this determination because I don't know what was used.
Okay. Do you have a...
YNW Juvy's father didn't appreciate the smirky reaction by YNW Melly. The family of Sakchaser and Juvy were allegedly very upset as well with how badly the prosecution were handling this case. As during the trial, we would then see a report of judge in the YNW Melly trial ruled that undercover detective Danny Polo has to remove his mask for the remainder of the testimony, as this is the same Danny Polo who stated this about YNW Melly just prior.
And they would quickly get checked. That happened to those two kids. I don't know how old they are. Those two guys that were claiming money, the Island Boys, with the fun haircut.
Okay.
Yeah, they were claiming to be members of, which is a set of, and they quickly got checked by almost every that can find them on social media. They got pinned, and they then had to recant and apologize.
Did you find any evidence whatsoever of any recanting or apologizing by Mr. Demons in the records that you reviewed?
There's no recanting, there's no apologizing, there's no one calling out Mr. Demons for being a fake.
That same man now had to remove his mask during his testimony. When looking at YNW Melly's reaction to it, it seems like Melly knew who this man was in the streets.
Yes, sir. You can take off your mask.
Yes, sir.
Over. State's objection, Your Honor, based on the previous issues.
Jury entering.
As here's where the families of Sakchaser and Juvy began to get very frustrated, as without even realizing, Danny Polo made YNW Melly look innocent even though he is a prosecution witness. This means he is supposed to make YNW Melly look guilty, but he didn't.
Now Melly's defense is now entering into cross-examination of Danny Polo. And what Danny is admitting on the stand, now Danny Polo had admitted that YNW Melly was actually being recruited by 2 different sets. And based off of the text message thread between the different individuals trying to recruit Melly, Melly was not replying. Melly stated weeks later that he was so busy doing radio interviews and shows that he just didn't have time to reply. And if you go back and read the text messages, those recruiters were basically begging Melly to reply back. And he didn't. Because Melly was an up-and-coming rapper who had a ton of money and ambition, and any of these different groups would love to have him under their roster. Because Melly wasn't interested in being a he was being labeled as somebody who was false flagging. It's possible that it was Shine that did the drive, all because Melly didn't want to be a part of their group.
As with every prosecution witness that took the stand to make YNW Melly look guilty, all ended up doing the opposite. An FBI agent took the stand as an example. This FBI agent specializes in cell phone data research. As the report goes on to state, YNW Melly's lawyer questions FBI agent that did an analysis on Melly's phone at the time of the crime.
Based on the information, you can't really tell the court precisely which locations these phones are following in, can you?
One of the limitations of cellular analysis is that you can only say a general area where the device would be at a given time.
All right. So even with the general analysis, all of the steps that we've gone through for about 4 or 5 hours, at the end of the day, you can never give an exact location.
True.
And could you tell if somebody was walking around a car with the phone? Would you be able to tell that?
No.
So it'd be your testimony that this phone, 9807, could be from here to here, correct?
Yes.
And what was the distance?
As this FBI agent didn't really share anything too case-breaking to make YNW Melly look guilty, making many wonder, why did he even show up? And it wasn't until the next topic of conversation where things got even more interesting. A DNA specialist then took the stand. His job was to go over DNA research on items that were found at the crime scene, including items that were found inside of the Jeep that they were driving in. As the report states, DNA analyst confirms YNW Melly's DNA was not found on multiple items that were recovered at the crime scene.
So going to item number 22, the swab from the Gucci sandals. We're able to compare the profile from Mr. Demons as opposed to the profile developed from those sandals.
I did, and he was excluded.
The stain on the front of the t-shirt, item number 23. We're able to compare Mr. Demons' profile to that.
I did a comparison, and he was again excluded.
What about item number 24, the cutting on the stain of the rear of the t-shirt?
After comparisons were done, he was excluded.
Okay, then on item number 25, the swab of stain from the Air Jordans.
Again, an exclusion.
Going on to item number 26, the swab from the yellow jacket.
An exclusion as well.
And in terms of the item number 27 and 28, the swabs at the Gatorade bottles. What were the results on that?
Those were both exclusions.
However, YNW Melly's DNA was found on the car door handle, which is obvious because we watched him get into the car.
Excuse me, you're able to see?
as this is now the part that really frustrated the families of Sakchaser and Juvy, as the prosecution just made Melly look innocent here. On day 1 of the trial, the prosecution revealed that Fredo Bang picked up YNW Melly after the crime was committed.
And Chris Thomas are. So what you're also going to find out is while Mr. Devins is out there on the side of the road, 4 in the morning, 4:42 specifically, he sends a drop pin, digital homing beacon, to his current location to one of his friends, Frederick Givens. Frederick Givens is also involved in the music industry, and he asked to be picked up. Frederick Givens then, about 11 minutes later, is sent another drop pin where Mr. Devins has moved a couple of meters. What you're going to find out as well, though, is these digital leashes, they have more than just phone calls.
However, now, due to the witnesses stating that Melly's DNA was not found inside of the vehicle, all YNW Melly's lawyers need to do now is just try to prove that Fredo Bang picked up YNW Melly before the crime happened, which won't even be that hard considering his DNA was not found inside of the vehicle. YNW Melly and his lawyers know this because this is how they reacted right after during the first recess.
Thank you. Let the record reflect the jury step down. Counsel remain. All with the defendant and no witness. Yes, counsel, I'm sorry. I just figured it was easier if we just let the jury go.
Understood.
Makes sense. Your Honor, may we have this discussion just in case there needs to be some supplementation testimony outside the presence of the
Sure.
However, thankfully, the prosecution had a home run with Sergeant Williams, where he presented a very likely scenario of YNW Melly being the guilty one, which caused YNW Melly to not have the greatest of facial expressions in the courtroom.